Facebook. How you guys doing today? This is Danya.
Hey everyone, this is Brian.
And hi, it's Karen.
Okay, so we have a great show for you guys today. Today's show, we're going to be introducing and talking about the GU272 Descendants Association. That is the project about those who were enslaved by Georgetown University, and now they're working on bringing those descendants together. And we're giving you the assistant director, am I correct?
The executive director.
Executive director, Karran Harper Royal. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Oh, good. So, Brian, I want to ask you to log out and come back in because we cannot see you.
Okay.
Yes, please do that. So while Brian is logging out and then coming back in, how are you today?
I'm good.
That's great. That's great. So we got a great show. We have a great audience. We already have reactions. We already have people coming up. So let's take a view of our comments. We have Barbara Elam. She says hello, and then we have Martine. Martine is from Ireland, so that's one of our over the big pond people. She's also a cousin. She's one of our cousins, and then we have Brandy. No, we have Vonna Jones.
Hi, Vonna.
I take it you know her.
Yes, Vonna is a descendant.
All right, hi, cousin, because I'm a descendant too. So anyway, we got people just coming in, and I'm so excited about it. I'm trying to wait and see if Brian is going to be able to connect. But while we're waiting for Brian, why don't you tell us a little bit about the GU272 project?
Sure. The GU272, I'll just say what the Descendants Association is. It's an association that we created once we realized that it was necessary to be able to have descendants speak somewhat with one. We're not going to have every single descendant, and we don't represent every descendant, but we knew that it was necessary to organize ourselves into some type of group once we realized the enormity of what was going on. And many of us found out about this through the article that was in the New York Times in the spring of 2016. And wow. Things started moving so fast. And it's hard to believe that it has been, 2 years since many of us found out about this, and it's nonstop. We constantly find more cousins.
Wow. So Brian is there. There he is. Hi, cousin.
Hi, I'm back.
Okay.
Hi, Brian.
So nothing like technology.
Yeah. So Karen was talking about, how the project came about, how the Descendants Association came to pass. Do you have any questions you wanted to ask real quick?
No, well, basically, I was gonna lead off with that one. So happy to listen.
Well, and I gave the condensed version, but really it began for me anyway when I saw the article in the New York Times in May of 2016. I had already been doing genealogy since December of 2015. Actually, is when I started doing genealogy, period, on my family. Really, I was looking for information on my maternal family, but I was building a tree for my children. And so that included my husband's family. So when I saw the name Hawkins in the town of Maringouin, Louisiana, I knew that was in the article. I knew it had to be about my husband's grandmother, whose name was Millie Hawkins. And I contacted the genealogist that was working on this project, Judy Riffle, and I say, hey, listen, this is my husband's family, and I'm pretty certain that we are a part of this. And she sent me back. I gave her what I had in my tree, which was another generation beyond my husband's grandmother. And she sent me a tree back that included 2 additional generations on the Hawkins line. But she also gave me the Butler line, which my husband's family was not aware that they were also Butlers. And
Wow.
so in the sale from 1838, my husband descends from the Hawkins and the Butler line. And that was in May of 2016. And then in June, CBS News did a really good piece that aired on the CBS Morning News. And I saw people in that piece that I knew. And one of them was one of my former teachers from middle school, but also a woman I knew in my education advocacy work because she was the school principal. That's Sherilyn Branch. She's the president of the GU272 Descendants Association. Well, I had Sherilyn's phone number in my phone. I picked up the phone. I called Sherilyn. I said, Sherilyn, we have to do something. We have to organize. We have to get these descendants together. And in July, we had a little lunchtime meeting, and we planned to have a meeting at her home. August 5th was our first meeting at her home. August 14th, we had a conference call with descendants from around the state and around the country. September 1st, we were on the campus of Georgetown when the president of Georgetown made an announcement about what the what the university was going to do. So things moved rapidly. And by January 1st, 2017, we were kicking off the start of the Descendants Association. That was the beginning of me being employed full-time as the executive director of the Descendants Association. But from August to January, we were putting in the work on Sunday conference calls almost every Sunday, putting together the structure of a nonprofit organization called the GU272 Descendants Association, as well as putting together the work of what will eventually be the GU272 Foundation.
Okay, one question that springs to mind, because what we're talking about is a project that spans 2 different states, Maryland and Louisiana. And as we were chatting yesterday, which was a revelation to me, I just assumed that all 272 enslaved people have been owned by Georgetown. But we were talking about they were actually spread out between 6 and 7 plantations. But again, because the scope of this project is so enormous, I just imagine there's a lot of moving parts. How do you keep the paper trail kind of organized with the DNA trail and kind of working both sides of the genealogical fence?
Well, one of the things I want to let people know, initially it was thought that it was 272 descendants, but the Georgetown Memory Project has now documented that there's actually 291 I'm sorry, not descendants, but original ancestors. So the Georgetown Memory Project has documented that there are only 1 ancestors who were enslaved by the Jesuits, not Georgetown, but by the Jesuits. And Georgetown was a beneficiary of the sale of the ancestors to 2 men in Louisiana. Many of those that were a part of the sale actually never left Maryland. Many people don't know that. All 272 that we thought we had never actually left Maryland. Many stayed in Maryland. And that is how we are able to see through DNA that we have cousins in Maryland whose families were in Maryland for hundreds of years, never left, but they were listed as part of that sale. And we have connected with many of our cousins in Maryland. And of course, we're connected through DNA. Many of them are a part of our association, and some serve on our board of directors. and we continue to contact and link up through our Facebook group. There is also a Maryland GU Facebook group. We try to continue to share family trees among each other, and we're constantly working together to see how we are all related to each other, not just, oh, we share DNA, but how do our trees link up? Because even though you share DNA, the real work comes in making sure the paper trail also matches up. It's it's a work in progress, and that's what my job is to reunite our families. Who knew that was such a job, to reunite what slavery tore apart? But it is rewarding work, and I thoroughly enjoy interacting with our cousins across the country.
Well, I wanted to share, let me share, for those that don't know, let me share the surnames. So I'm going to put us on high, make this a solo thing. And these are the surnames, if you guys can see them. These are the surnames that are connected to the association. So when I read them off, you got Anderson, Henderson, Barnes, Barney, Blaylock, Blair, Brown, Butler, Campbell, Conti, Coyles, Crimble, Hutchmore, Cucumber, Cush, Hotchman, Diggs, it's spelled in different ways, Dorsey, spelled in different ways, Eaglin, Ford, Goff, Greenleaf, Hall, Harris, Hawkins, Hill, Jones, Johnson, Kelly, Kirchman, which is connected to Cutchmore, Langley, Mahoney, Mason, Merrick, Nolan, Plowden, Queen, Rowley, Scott, Sweeton or Sweden, Ware, West, Wilton, and Yorkshire. Now, let me say this. Those names, it's at least 10 of them that connect to where Brian and I come from. At least 10. And I noticed that with the Merlin Project, when I joined the Merlin, because I believe that I'm a descendant of Queen because I do match DNA. And we actually, the guy that I was talking to, he and I actually did go through sharing the trees and looking at each other's tree and trying to find a connection. And I think we might have found a connection with the Ware, which is crazy in itself. But that was something that we did. We did exactly what you were talking about. But the thing is that those names, they connect to Edgefield. And when I first got into the Merlin group, I started to talk to these people and I realized, wait a minute, I've spoken to you before, but it was for something else. And I've spoken to you before and it was about Edgefield. So how does South Carolina connect to these Merlin enslaved folks? What are your thoughts on how they connect?
Well, I don't have any direct evidence of how the South Carolina link is there. What I suspect, it may be through the enslaver or through overseers. What we know is that many of our cousins who come from Maryland, who have roots, our ancestors. I see a lot of Irish ancestry in the DNA of our families, of my own husband's family. And it is possible that some of the ancestors may have had some interactions with the overseers or the slaveholders before they were enslaved by the Jesuits, or even while they were enslaved by the Jesuits. And it is possible that those people of European descent may have had some connection to North Carolina. But that's some of the research that still needs to be done. And I think that working through GEDmatch or through other chromosome browsers, And, you know, I think it's going to require some further DNA studies, painstaking DNA study, groups by group, because those names that those ancestors had, which is very unusual for enslaved people to have surnames, though they came from somewhere, and we are not certain yet where all of those surnames came from.
Right.
But many of the ancestors were given to the Jesuits by parishioners. So those surnames may come from whomever enslaved them in the first place. And they may have been of Irish descent or English descent, and those families may have come from North Carolina once they left England or Ireland or what have you. We don't know yet, but I think further DNA study and paper trail study will help figure that out.
Okay.
Which is actually really interesting because we don't really hear many stories about enslaved people being gifted to churches. So again, because we're always trying to recommend different kind of resources that our viewers and our fans can actually access. So useful. I was aware that sometimes Catholic they baptized their enslaved people. So you can look up those, try to hopefully find those kind of records. But I never thought about parishioners actually gifting their slaves to a church. And keeping on the topic of the paper trail and the records, how easy or difficult has it been for you to trace some, obviously not all of them, but some of the people who did leave from Maryland down to Louisiana through the paper trail?
Well, to be clear, what I do is, because my husband is related to almost everybody, most of the families, because he's a Hawkins and a Butler, when a descendant contacts me at the GU272 Descendants Association because they think they may be related, I try to help them figure out if they are related. If they have not already figured out for themselves, I don't actually go and research directly, other than for helping families figure out if they're connected, if they have questions. Sometimes they already know. Most times they already know, but they may want more information about other cousins or how they fit into the mix. And that's how I can share with them, because our tree is constantly growing. And I'm also collecting more information as I try to build a larger GU272 tree through exploring my own husband's DNA matches. It's really amazing, all of the cousins that are out there that are connected to the Hawkins and Butler families. I know that they connect to the Wares. They connect to the Queen family. They connect to the Ford family. And we have certain families that come from different parishes here in Louisiana. Once those ancestors were brought to Louisiana, various groupings were placed in 3 different parishes: Ascension Parish, Iberville Parish, and Terrebonne Parish. Well, we know that the Hawkins family, various members of the Hawkins family went to each of those parishes. And so when a family contacts me, I can let them know that. Many of the Queen family members, lots of them ended up in Terrebonne Parish and subsequently in Lafourche Parish. Many of the Hawkins and Butlers also were in Maringouin. The Fords and the Joneses, and some of the Wares and West, many of them ended up in Ascension Parish. I have paperwork that helps me to figure that out, and I'm creating a spreadsheet. As I come in contact with the cousins, I'm beginning to plot them on this spreadsheet so that I can then tell others, oh, so you may want to get in touch with this one or that one, because they are also they also have roots in this parish. That's part of my job as connecting our cousins to each other.
Well, do you think one of the reasons why so many of the groups that were in Louisiana are so they kind of married everyone and are so closely related? I mean, I would imagine because, they went through a pretty traumatic experience. So they would have had that shared experience. And you said they're kind of split out into 3 rough groups. So, I would imagine you have that shared history. You're kind of talking about life back in Maryland. You're telling your grandkids about life back in Maryland, and they're hearing it from different parts of the family. I can see how they could almost become a subgroup within Louisiana, almost becoming their own little endogenous population. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the term endogamy, it's generations of cousins just marrying each other. I mean, is that kind of mirroring what you're finding genetically?
Yes, and I would imagine that because French-speaking area, many of it maybe felt more comfortable for those coming from Maryland to kind of stick together. And of course, in Maringouin, Iberville Parish, they were mostly kept together. Even when that plantation was sold over and over again, many of those ancestors were still kept together. They were not as split apart as those who were in Terrebonne Parish. In Terrebonne Parish, with subsequent sales, the group was not kept together the way they were in Maringouin.
Okay, but again, like I said, there's just so many. It just seems as though there's so many moving parts and so many layers of complexity. So even within the 3 different groups, they didn't have a similar experience.
Absolutely, they did not have a similar experience, and that's why it's so important to talk about this from various perspectives on many different platforms so that people can begin to hear the totality of the story. The issues in Iberville Parish and what the ancestors went through are going to be different than what the ancestors in Terrebonne Parish went through. Because we know it's so interesting because those in Terrebonne Parish ended up in a Lafourche Parish. And as I met some of the Mahoney and cousins, they grew up with some of my maternal cousins who ended up on the Matthews plantation in Lafourche Parish. In fact,
oh, wow.
I know it's crazy. My mom's stepmother, her family, her stepmother's family are connected to this. They're Mahonies. And when I saw my uncle in my uncle's DNA, I saw that he was connected to some of the GU272 Hawkins family. And I'm like, wait a minute. And so when I went to visit, we still call her grandma. We don't say step grandma or anything like that. She's just Grandma Put. When I went to visit her and tell her about this, she's like, oh yeah, Mama's Hardin family married a Hawkins. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is how my uncle has a connection to the Hawkins family. It's amazing.
There was me yesterday saying, oh, I don't have any connection to this story, but I'm not sure if it's the same white Matthews enslaving family. But I'm a Matthews, both through Virginia and in South Carolina, and I know that they had descendants who went to Louisiana. Where, I don't know, but I do know that they did go further south.
Well, if they ended up in Lafourche Parish, Louisiana, there was a plantation called Matthews, and now it's called the town of Matthews. And my family did not leave that plantation till the late 1960s.
Wow, that is a long, long time. Well, to give you an idea, my mother's Matthews and her enslaved Matthews were held by the Matthews family from 1692 in Pennsylvania all the way to the Emancipation Proclamation in South Carolina.
Yeah, so yes, family. this story is it's amazing, and the connections of our families are amazing. And one of the things I will say about our families in Ascension Parish, the Jones family from Ascension Parish, descendants of the Jones family ended up being movers and shakers with starting HBCUs in Louisiana.
Oh, what a history.
Yes. I know. So with Southern University in Baton Rouge and Grambling University in up in northern Louisiana, the same family has connections with starting both of those universities. And so there's just amazing history that comes out of these families. I really one day want to see some type of museum in Louisiana that talks about this history, because number one, Henry Johnson, one of the purchasers of the GU272, was a former governor of Louisiana, state senator, and U.S. Not state senator, U.S. though, yeah, state senator, U.S. representative, and so he was a political figure in this state. And to have purchased, be a part of such a large sale of enslaved people is historic in and of itself. But the fact that so many of these enslaved ancestors were kept together, and to this day, these families remained in Maringouin. Many of them are still in Terrebonne Parish to this day, and now we have reconnected. All of this is historic and history in the making. I think there needs to be something that documents the history that has passed and continues to document the history as we are making it.
No, believe me, trust. This would make an amazing documentary, and an important one too. It's just such, on so many different levels, it's just a really genuinely intriguing story. It's an intriguing history. It's great to see the kind of positive strides that you're making, which brings me to two questions, and they're both mirror images of each other. What would you say the most rewarding aspect of this project has been, and what would you say has been the most difficult or challenging?
The most rewarding aspect of this, bar none, is meeting all of the cousins. Traveling, wherever I travel to, I always try to find cousins. That is, bar none, the most rewarding aspect of this. The most difficult part of it is not enough time to do all the things that need to be done. Of course, not enough money. If I had more money, I would do more. Then I could hire people to help. There's just so much more work to be done. If I could do all the things that I am envisioning, everything would be even better.
Yes, I know that feeling very, very well. One thing that we chatted about, because I had heard certain information about what it could potentially mean being a descendant of one of the GU272, and that was getting free admittance to Georgetown University. And found out that indeed was not correct. So I thought I would ask you.
Yes, that is a misnomer. Georgetown has offered legacy status. Legacy status simply means that descendants get a leg up in the admissions process. It's a prospective student who is a descendant of the GU272 still has to meet the academic criteria to get into Georgetown. They just get extra points in the admissions process, but they do not automatically get free tuition. They still have to apply for scholarships and financial aid and that type of thing. It does not come with automatic free tuition. I know many people think that it does. Almost everywhere I go, people say, "Oh, I thought y'all got free tuition at Georgetown." No, that is not true.
Good. And as I said, as soon as I found that out yesterday, I thought it might be helpful to clear that one up, because I was genuinely surprised when you said that, because I distinctly remember reading. I don't want to I don't want to tar a certain newspaper. I'm not sure if it was them, but it was a DC newspaper, basically saying you get a free, you kind of get a free ride. So, like I said, I guess it is kind of important for people to realize that you can put it on your application, but like you said, it just basically give you kind of points in the scoring system.
Yes, just as if if your parents were alumni, you get the same kind of leg up as if your parents were alumni.
So one other question I have for you is, apart from staying in Maryland and going to Louisiana, are you aware of any other kind of Jesuit-held places, other universities that the enslaved people might have gone to?
Yeah, in the middle or early 1820s, a group of Jesuits left Maryland and went over to Missouri, and they took some of the enslaved families with them. And I can see from my husband's DNA that he has some connections to folks who ended up in St. Louis, in the St. Louis area. Well, it's in Florissant, Missouri. The Jesuits started St. Louis College, which became St. Louis University. And then later, in around 1835 or so, a couple of those Jesuits left Missouri and came down to St. Landry Parish, Louisiana, where they started St. Charles College. And that's in Grand Couteau, Louisiana. And again, my husband has DNA cousins in Grand Couteau, Louisiana. Interestingly, there's a Mahoney cousin that we have down there. That's a cousin of mine also. And she's a cousin of my husband's. And she's a cousin of some of the Maryland cousins, Mahoney cousins that never left Maryland. Her family is from Grand Couteau. And that's some further study that needs to be done. We know that when the Jesuits came from Missouri down to St. Landry Parish, which is where Grand Couteau is, they did bring some of the families that with them. And those families are some of the ones that they brought from Maryland. So there's this circle, but maybe I should say triangle, right? And we are beginning to see some DNA connections within that triangle. Again, further study is needed to make all those linkages, but we're beginning to see it, and we're constantly asking people, if you think you're a part of this, if you've done DNA testing, or if you want to do DNA testing, do it through Ancestry, because many of the GU272 descendants have tested on their own or through the Georgetown Memory Project. Genealogist Judy Riffle has been managing the DNA kits that are done through the Georgetown Memory Project. But there are many, many more that are not managed through the Georgetown Memory Project. And now tell me how I know, because again, my husband is related to all, and I can see when I'm managing his DNA, when I'm clicking on shared matches, and he matches many of those that the Georgetown Memory Project manages. And I click on a shared match and I see dozens and dozens of people who are just independent cousins out there who tested on their own. And of course, on GEDmatch, I can see, I'm becoming more and more prolific at using GEDmatch and using the various tools on GEDmatch. I'm able to see other cousins who are a part of this. So using what they call genetic genealogy is a very helpful tool in figuring out who else is a part of this.
So I got disconnected, but you guys kept on going. I'm really glad about that.
Welcome back.
Thanks. So I don't know if this question was asked while I was trying to get my stuff back together, but were you able to tell the difference? Have you already answered this question? If so, we can move on. But can you explain the difference between the GU272 Descendants Association and the Georgetown Memory Project?
Well, that question didn't come up, but I'm happy to tell the difference. Okay. So the Georgetown Memory Project was started by alumnus Richard Cellini. And actually, Richard is also on our board. But Richard Cellini started the Memory Project, hired 2 genealogists, to my knowledge. He may have others. But Melissa Ruffner works mostly in Maryland. And Judy Riffle, who is based in Louisiana. Judy Riffle manages the Georgetown Project kits on Ancestry. So if someone gets a DNA match and it has some initials, 2 initials, and then it says managed by or administered by Georgetown Project. All that's through the Georgetown Memory Project. So if they contact me, I'm just going to say contact the Georgetown Memory Project, because I don't have access to the information about those kits. They have to go through the Georgetown Memory Project for more information about those kits. And so we work together, but it is a separate organization, whereas the GU272 Descendants Association is the organization to reconnect descendants and create a sense of family and connectedness among descendants, where the Georgetown Memory Project is finding descendants, documenting how many descendants that are out there. And now I think they've hit 7,000, which is amazing. And we're, we had this big, the GU272 Descendants Association had this big reunion this summer in June, and it was amazing. Not enough time. Of course, people want to know when we're going to do it again. We'll have to put that together at some point. And so we're about reconnecting our families. This is about, reconnecting with slavery tore apart, creating a sense of family, because these families would be connected were it not for that sale. They would all be connected still in Maryland.
That's right. That's right. So go ahead, Brian.
Oh, I was just going to say, once again, hello to everyone who's watching. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm looking at my tablet, and I know that Donnie is looking at her computer, just in case anyone has any specific questions. There is one.
Yeah, there is one. Scott Shepard asked, he said that this was awesome. And he said, so do names exist for all 272 of these people?
We don't have names for 272. Actually, there's 291 of them. I think they do have some of them. They may have just first names. The Georgetown Memory Project has been documenting that information, and you can definitely search their website. And we also have on our website, in the resources section of our website, we have posted some of the Georgetown Memory Project's updates about the people, the information that they have found. But you can definitely check with the Georgetown Memory Project for more information on all of the names. And also at the Georgetown Slavery Archives, there is a document, actually I have it right here. It is a list of people sold by Thomas Mulledy in 1838. And then that is updated by Richard Cellini at the Georgetown Memory Project. And that document is on their website, and on our website, it's about the lost slaves. I'm not happy with that name because I don't say the lost slaves. Those are our ancestors.
Right, right.
So they're people to me. To me, they're not lost, but those who remained in Maryland, they were part of the sale. Those additional 91 ancestors. That article is featured on both our website and the Georgetown Memory Project's website, so that you can get a sense of those names. So the Georgetown Slavery Archives website, their inventory tab, it has lots of documents that give you information. And at the Georgetown Slavery websites, the inventory tab, there are several links to subsequent sales. And in those subsequent sales, their names appear. When they were mortgaged, their names appear. So if you're willing to do some reading and research, you can see names over and over again. You can track where they were moved to, when they were sold again, especially those who were in Terrebonne Parish, because we know that they didn't stay together. And so you can find them. And I think in Maryland, you may be able to find some documentation in Maryland for some of them. So so names do exist. It may take some research, but names do exist.
That's actually how Brian and I find our families. You know, that's one of the main things that we tell everybody. You know, it's in mortgages, it's in all kinds of, every time they move, that's how we are actually finding our family for the Moses Williams Project with the 45 kids, and how that was the beginning right there. We had to go through deeds and documents and probate records and everything, and we just went through Brian went through most of that stuff. I was against it, but yeah, you know, we those were the things that we did. And then he sat there and he wrote them out on paper first, and then he gave us, it was like 5 or 6 of us, and he gave us what he wanted us to do, and we went from there. And it was just, that's how we found them. That was exactly how you find your family. That's the exact moves. Those are the main moves to finding your ancestors. And it's so amazing that this type of thing is going on, because even within our own family, that's exactly what we're doing. We have what's called a calling all branches. And we're trying to bring those families who were separated due to slavery back together again. You know, and that's what this is all about. So it's like a huge movement that's going on amongst genealogists to bring their families back together, be it white, black, Native American, it doesn't matter. That's what everybody is really trying to do. I feel like genealogists are the true historians. You know, it's nothing to play with.
Well, it actually is changing the face of genealogy. You know, in the past, people thought of genealogy as a bunch of old people looking at census records. Mm-hmm. And especially in African American genealogy, we thought, oh, well, once we get to that 1870 census, that's it. We can't find anything else. We're stuck. But nobody, and not even on major television programs, right? They don't talk about going beyond census records and slave schedules, right? They don't talk about the rich bounty of information that we will find in these court records. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember the first time I went into a courthouse, and what I was able to find, that, you know, my ancestors owned property in 1870 and 1880. And then now that we have access to those Freedmen Bureau records, and then the sale, I remember going into the Ascension Parish Courthouse with the clerk of court around the GU272. He had not seen the document yet of the a mortgage of some of the GU272 by Governor Henry Johnson. And you should have seen his face light up and how excited the clerk of court was when he saw the document. It is very exciting to go into these old courthouses and see these documents and see your ancestors. You would think that it might be sad, but it actually is exciting to see documentation of your ancestor on these records, And sometimes you're finding subsequent generations. You could take it back another couple of generations when you find them, because they're often listed in family groups.
Nope, absolutely. And before I forget, Lisa, you asked a very good question. Lisa, we will be posting information about the GU272 Descendants website a little bit later in the program, and Dawn will also be providing you guys with the link. So Thank you very much for asking that question. But you actually touched on something really, really interesting, Karran. If I was just mentioning this to Donnie the other day, I've been deep into my earliest enslaved ancestors in Virginia, going back between 1621 to about 1715. And I've been on it for months. And for me, I mean, it's exciting, as you were saying, to find proof and to find names and to find out what happened to them and start getting glimpses into their life story. But what I was finding a couple of days ago is it really does wear on me after a while. It's just that continual story of, even if overall the family is held within the same enslaving family, still one brother is going to one person, a sister's going to another person, and those families are getting broken down at that level. What advice would you give someone who's kind of delving into this for the first time, and that they're just really seeing that kind of hardcore evidence of what happened during slavery?
Well, my advice is to continue. Don't let it wear you down. I mean, think of it as you're building the story around their lives, and they're going from just being the slaves to really being people, your family, your family, their people. This is no different than looking at something your grandmother left, her diary or her photo album. It's just that this is many generations back. It's still your family. It's not, I think that before, at least for me, before I got into and remember, I am so brand new into genealogy, not even 3 years. But before I got into this, I did not have a personal connection to my ancestors who were enslaved. To me, they were just the slaves. My ancestors were slaves. That's that. They didn't have a name. They didn't have a face. They didn't have a story around their lives. Right. But once I started looking at records, I can begin to build a story around their lives. And then as they came out of slavery, and I can see the things that they were able to do so soon out of slavery. And it began to give me a sense of strength. I feel like I don't have any problems. I can't complain about nothing. There ain't nothing I can't do, because these people did stuff when they had so much less than I have. And so my advice to people is to see this as a source of strength, and certainly to pass it on to younger generations, so that they can draw strength from it, and a sense of y'all tell me what the word is, tenacity and stick-to-itness, and just like don't give up. Persistence.
Yes. The thing is, and you right now, you are literally, when talking to me and Brian, you're, as a matter of fact, even to our guests, you are literally preaching to the choir. You have stated perfectly how we all feel about this entire thing when it comes to researching and what it does. I mean, I can sit here. Somebody asked me in an interview one time, they asked me, what did it do for me? And everything you just said is what it did for me. It gave me strength. It gave me power. It let me know that I really don't have anything to complain about. It let me know that this is just the best thing that I've ever done. And now it's my life's goal to at least get one person in everybody's family to start doing this. Because I think that it's one of the biggest uplifting things that you could never do, because then you start to realize that they're not just slaves, they are people. And you have those who are, you have people, like one of the things that Brian and I went through when we were talking about the book, and he said this to you yesterday, we started giving stories on what we thought one of our ancestors was saying at the time. It caused a big issue. It caused the biggest problem in the world for Moses, for Martha, for John. You know, they were like, oh, why are you talking about this? You aren't slaves, so what's your problem? My issue, I'm talking about my family. So why is it a problem? Because I'm talking about my family who just happen to be enslaved. You know, and they don't look at it like that. They don't look at it. They're not taking in, people who are offended by it are not taking in the fact that you can't be offended about somebody talking about their family who just happen to be enslaved. So you like, I got chills right now, because that's what it does. It just gives you a sense of they did exist.
Well, I'll tell you, when I look at, and I'm looking at this list right now in my hand, the list of the people sold by Thomas Mallory in 1838. This is one of the documents that you can get from the Georgetown Slavery Archives, just from their website. If you just Google Georgetown Slavery Archive. And when I first saw this list, it lists Isaac at the very top of the list. Isaac Hawkins. They don't have Hawkins on here, but we later found out his name is Isaac Hawkins. That is my husband's 4 times great-grandfather. That is the man for whom the building is named on George. I was fortunate enough to be able to be there and speak when that building was dedicated in Isaac Hawkins, in his honor. And Isaac had a son named Patrick, and Patrick had several children. My husband descends from Patrick's son, Francis. And in that sale, Francis was 12 years old. And I was talking to a descendant, and he descends from Peter. And I said, oh, Peter was one of the babies. I could feel Peter was 5 years old. And I talked to a lot of descendants who descend from Jackson. Jackson was 3 years old when that sale occurred. Jackson has a lot of descendants out there. And I talk to them all the time. And I can't help but feel for Jackson and think about what it must have been like for Jackson when he came over here on a ship and with all of his siblings. And now we found out that Isaac, we don't have any documentation of him here. And 2 of Isaac's sons didn't come, even though they were a part of that sale. So already we know that Isaac's family was torn apart. Some came here, and then once they got here, they were split up among 3 different Louisiana parishes. You see how the story begins to build? This is my husband's family. Some were left in Maryland. And I know some of that family, maybe uncles or cousins, probably some of Isaac's sisters and brothers ended up in Missouri. And then some of them ended up in St. Landry Parish. I know they did because DNA tells me so. And I know that they ended up in the 3 Ascension, Terrebonne, and Maringouin parishes. I mean, in Iberville parishes. I know they did. So Isaac Sr.'s family was split up all kinds of ways. And so, you know, you can't help but see this as a family and feel the emotion of it all. So I can't just call them the slaves anymore.
That's right.
This is family. This is family. When you start talking about a 3-year-old child, when you know the descendants from that 3-year-old child, and they had children younger than this 3-year-old child who was a part of this sale, who are family members, and I know the descendants of those children.
So
you know,
Brian, Does this make you think of the House of Bondage? Oh, he got kicked out. Shoot.
Oh.
Let me tell you what the House of Bondage is. I'm going to send a quick message. But the House of Bondage is a book written by Octavia Albert. Octavia Albert wrote this book back in 1890. Basically, she was taking information about enslaved people who were once enslaved, and just writing their stories out. And there was this one woman that she spoke to a lot by the name of Charlotte Brooks. Now, Charlotte kind of went into me because I feel like she's a part of my family, because I'm connected to the Brooks line, who are also connected to the Butlers. They were brought from, I think, Virginia, according to the book. And this is true story. So this is actually the first WPA slave narrative. I don't care what nobody say. They can talk about the WPA slaves all they want to, that slave narrative, but hers was the first one, written in 1890, because she was given documentation on what was going on during that time by talking to these ex-enslaved people and what was happening in their lives. Well, Charlotte was from Virginia and they moved to Louisiana.
Wow.
So this whole story, that whole House of Bondage story, was based out of Louisiana.
Wow.
Yeah, it's awesome. So I'm telling him to log back in. But while he's logging back in, I wanted to ask you, did you guys talk about, where's my notes? Did you talk about, this question just slipped my mind.
Well, while you're thinking about it, I can tell you we did talk about the difference between the Georgetown Memory Project and the GU272. We did talk about, the free tuition issue. I don't remember at what point you got knocked off.
Yeah.
We talked about, no, there is no free tuition just because you're a descendant. Let's see. I don't know.
That was it.
There he is.
So I wanted to make sure that got out, because that was some information that really, really needed people to know. And so Brian, I was telling them about the House of Bondage and how it was based in Louisiana. The whole book was based in Louisiana, but where they came from, where those that were enslaved came from, she never gave where she came from. I know they said something about Virginia at one point, but it makes me wonder, did any of these people are any of these people that Octavia spoke to, were they from that actual sale? Did they come from Maryland? What was it? Because Charlotte gave just overall information on at least 8 different enslaved people, and that's not even including who Octavia spoke to throughout her, interviewing of all these different people. But it's an it's an awesome book. You guys can find it online. You can read it online, but my suggestion is that you purchase it. It's nothing like having it in your hand.
Oh, I love having books in my hand. Yeah, I have purchased so many books since I started doing this work. I've purchased so many books because they're such great reference materials.
Right. The author, Danielle Banks Brady asks, who is the author? The author's name is Octavia Albert, and she wrote the book originally. It was in the it was like the mid to late 1880s. And then she died. And in her honor, her husband and her daughter published the book in 1890. It is the first slave narrative, giving you blow by blow on things that happened during that time period while they were enslaved. And it also gives you a sense of it talks a lot about what's happening today but it was going on in 1890. Like it focuses on the liquor store on every corner, how it got to that point. You know, it's amazing how you can just draw from this book. It's one of the most awesome books I've ever read in my life. Like I oh my God.
I was going to say, if you've read the book Barracoon was written about, I believe it was written about 10 to 12 years after the House of Bondage. And if you liked Barracoon, if you like that kind of first-person narrative, you will absolutely love. You'll find it very meaningful. There's a lot in the book to love. I'm going to admit there were 3 points when I was reading the House of Bondage where I had to put it down. I had to put it down and just kind of like not read it for a little while because it's real. It's for real.
Yeah.
The author Octavia is a wonderful writer. She did the utmost respect to all of the people that she interviewed and wrote about. She told their stories.
Yes, she did.
Didn't pull her punch. They didn't pull their punches telling it. She didn't pull their punches writing it. But it is a beautiful, beautiful book.
Yeah, the book is so deep, and it touches on names in our family, Settles and Brooks. And I'm telling you, I believe Charlotte is she's somewhere. She is somewhere in my family.
She has something to do with Martha. I'm convinced she has something to do with Martha.
Has something to do. Yes, most definitely. But that's one of the best books I've come across. So let me ask you this. Can you guys still hear me? Because I've frozen.
Yes, we hear you fine.
I can hear you fine.
Hear you fine.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this question. How can somebody figure out if they are related to, if they're a part of the project?
Well, I recommend that they, if you have ancestry from Maryland, and it doesn't have to be all of these, but these are some clues. If you have ancestry from Maryland, does your Maryland ancestry link to one of the Jesuit plantations in Baltimore or Howard County, Prince George's County, St. Mary's County, Charles County, Maryland? Does your family have links to Louisiana? And does those Louisiana links end up in Ascension, Iberville, St. Landry, or Terrebonne Parish? And do you have a DNA connection to any of the Georgetown Project DNA kits on Ancestry.com? Do you have family connections to one or more of the surnames on our surname list, which you can find at GU272.net? And, if you can answer yes to several of these questions, just contact me through our website. There's a contact link at the GU272.net website, or you can send an inbox message to me at our GU272 Descendants Facebook page, or at GU_272. Send us a direct message on Twitter. Those are some of the ways, if you have a combination of some of those things, might be a descendant. And, you don't have to have all of those things, but especially if you've done DNA testing and you see that several of those Georgetown Project kits pop up in your DNA, and you'll know those kits because it'll have initials such as BH, AH, MC, BM, and it'll say managed by Georgetown Project. And if you contact me and you are also on GEDmatch, I have my husband's and one of his cousins, their kids on GEDmatch. And again, my husband's related to the Butlers and the Hawkinses, direct descendants. And then they're related to almost everybody else. I can run your kit number on GEDmatch against his kit numbers. And and test out some of the other kids, because I know a long list of other cousins who are not part of the Georgetown Project kids, who are just other cousins who are descendants. And I can tell you if you're matching them as well. So I can work with you to see if you're matching several of the others. And then if you share your tree with me, I could try to help you figure out if you are linking to some of the families, because several of the other families have shared their trees with me as well. And if I can't help you and you still think that you might be a link, you should also contact the Georgetown Memory Project. But I would suggest that you contact me first, and I can see how you fit in. And then, you know, if we're not able to make a link, then try with the Georgetown Memory Project, and we'll see. Okay. But you know, I manage our social media, and I also manage our website. So if you send an email through our website, I'm going to be the one that gets it, and we'll see from there.
All right. Well, we're gonna. So there's a question by Gaynell Banks Brady. She says, Karran, does GU272 have any upcoming events or programs?
Right now, we don't have anything on the schedule. We will be having something coming up in the new year. So stay tuned for those. You know, if you are a descendant, you'll be getting an email about some things coming up in the new year. We don't have any public events coming up right now. I hope to have some things coming up in the new year, though.
All right, and in the link, I placed in the link about well, Brian has placed in the link about the in the comment section about the House of Bondage. It's a link for the on Google Books. So that's on the online version. And Gaynell, I know you said you need this book in your life. Well, there it is. That's it right there. And then I'm trying, for whatever reason, my computer has its own little mind going on right now because I'm frozen.
Okay. Well, I do see another question from Angela Wilson. She says she would like to see if her Hawkins link up with my husband's, and I would just say, send me a message either through the GU272 Facebook page, Twitter account, or through our website. If you have done DNA, and you know, you see any kits that are managed by Karran Royal as a DNA match, then that will tell you right then and there that there's a DNA connection, because I do manage two of the GU272, my husband and one of his cousins, and both of them are direct descendants. And then, of course, if you're on GEDmatch, you know, there'll be some others, and I can help you with that. So just directly contact me. Okay.
And again, you couldn't.
Go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say, you couldn't ask for an easier website URL, GU272.net.
Yep. Yeah. Yes. And then we also have the their Google Docs membership, possible, you know, to see how you relate or how you connect. And so Gaynell said, Karran, my husband's father is a Hawkins from Iberville Parish.
Oh, now you see that? that makes me really think. That, in Iberville Parish, Iberville Parish,
okay,
the Hawkins are related. Do we have a DNA test, Gaynell? that's. See that, you know, I think about this like with medical testing or psychiatric evaluations. Like all you need is like one or two from this list and one more from that list. Mm-hmm. Hawkins from Iberville Parish. I would say that's almost all you need, but no. Let's take a look at it, Gaynell. Let's take a closer look.
That's great.
Let's take a closer look. It might be related.
Brian, do you have any more questions?
No, I've asked all of mine.
Okay.
Okay, so Goodell says she can't get him to take it. So then let's plot out the family tree, because we have a good read on the Hawkins line through the family tree.
She said she was going to bug you. She said, I'm going to bug you. See, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, bug me after you get his family tree done, because I got our family tree done. So then we'll let the two trees marry. Yeah, now I can't help you with his tree. Get his tree done, his Hawkins tree done.
She said it's already done. So you got you get ready to be talking to Gaynell.
All right.
Gaynell, if you're not a part of the GU272 page, you need to get it on Facebook, and we're going to actually share all of the links in the comments section, because my computer is really kind of acting ugly, but we're going to go in and we're going to share all of the links for both all of her contact information. So the Twitter, the GU272 Descendants Association Facebook page, the Maryland Descendant Association Facebook page. We're going to just hit it all up. The website, we're going to make sure you guys have all of that information. And this was a really, really great and very interesting show. Thank you so much for being a part of it, Karran.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us.
This was fun. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
So, Brian, what is coming up? Well, you guys, this was our season 2, and we hope that you feel like we opened up strong. And I want to say this season of our show, it's about letting people know that Black genealogy exists. That's what it's all about. So we're hoping to get in touch with people who are really deep into the genealogical research. Karran was one of them. We're going to try and pull in some people like from our Black ancestry, hopefully. We're going to try to really try to pull in those African-American genealogists that have done research on both ends that will be able to help all people do what they need to do. It's about supporting the, you always hear about Black people don't ever support each other. Well, that's not what this show is going to be about. We're gonna support each other. Something severe.
That we are. And you were mentioning the next show, which is the Sunday after next. And that is going to be how to research or how to document your female ancestors. So a lot about, what to do if you don't know, if you're not really sure about their maiden name, or if you don't know their maiden name, or if they didn't have a maiden name, all of that kind of stuff. How you document it, different ways that you can try to get that information.
And Gaynell said she's tagging somebody by the name of Jael Gordon. You should do a talk about DNA. Jael, if you're watching and you have some information to share about DNA, contact me or Brian through the Genealogy Adventures page, and let's see what we can do, because it's about supporting each other and really really showing that support for African American research and trying to pull all this together, as well as European American research, Native American research. We're all one, and we gotta stop separating it. We gotta stop separating. Point blank. That's all there is to it.
Because we got a little bit of all that in us. So
yes, it's all in
makes us up.
Right. So Jael said which part. So Jael, you get in touch with me, or just go to our Genealogy Adventures page and send us a message, and that's gonna be a conversation you and Brian. Because I do the DNA, but yeah. Yeah. That's all I can say about that. So, but this is great. I'm really loving it, and hopefully we'll be getting a schedule out to you guys real soon. I know our cousin Kevin had asked about a schedule at one point, and we're working on it. We're trying to get that schedule together, but it's about supporting. It's about really supporting, showing the support, and pulling out all of the African American researchers that are really setting up, just setting apart, setting the standard for what it is that we need to do as a family in order to pull all of our families together, be it Black, white, Native American, what have you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I've also noticed a couple of comments about the different kind of records that people can access. We did a show a couple of months ago. You'll see it on our YouTube page, and if you go to the video tab on our Facebook page, you'll find that one. Actually, that was one of our longer segments. We reference literally hundreds of different kind of record databases that you can access to push that story back with your enslaved ancestors.
Yes, yes. All right. Well, thank you again, Karran, for a wonderful show. Thank you so much. Brian, you want to close us out?
I was going to say thank you as well. Karran, thank you all for sharing part of your Sunday with us, and we will see you the Sunday after next, 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
All right. Goodbye, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
So, Brian,